So yes, so there is a guitar, there's a mandolin. What else do you play, Fred?
Oh, I did bring some other things. Thank you. Thank you. Some stuff to distribute. Yeah, you do. Yes, absolutely. These amateurs.
Exactly. So yeah, if you stay a while after the talk, he has like merch and CDs he can sell to you.
What?
With that, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you.
Fred Pike, everyone.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Boy, I can't believe I'm actually at Superweek. You know, I know everybody has said that. And 3 weeks ago, I told Zali, even though I love Zali, I love Petra, I love Betty, I'm not coming, Zali. I'm just a little bit too scared. I can't do it. And as much as I love them, that was sufficient. That was necessary, but not sufficient to get me here. And then, like 10 days ago, Robert and Tim Wilson were texting me, tweeting me a message in Twitter saying, "What do you mean you're not going? You got to come. You got to come." And so I gave in to peer pressure. I'm risking my life. Oh, come on. All right, tech support. We've got this fancy, there we go. So I'm risking my life to come to Hungary following somebody's a dog, either Robert or Tim, but they're leading me to Hungary. And, but I'm here and I'm happy to be here. I also know from sitting in the back of the room in the punch card prize yesterday that you can't see shit from the back. So I'm really trying to do a good job of putting things on the slide that you can see. So there's the important part of that slide. So I'm Fred Pike. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which for the Europeans means I'm from Chicago, basically. I work at a company called Northwoods. I'm one of the managing directors, and I lead the GA and GTM practice area there. But that's not why I'm here. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about mandolins. So I'm the president of the Milwaukee Mandolin Orchestra, which is, yeah, thank you, Matteo. Ooh, okay, the first prize. Thank you. You're welcome, yeah.
Thank you.
This, by the way, is I wanted to bring chocolate. And I was flying through Zurich, and I'm thinking, God, the Swiss don't know shit about chocolate. So I'll bring some chocolate from Brazil, where I was just at. So, é o melhor chocolate do Brasil. Now, all the Europeans are going, oh, it's so cute when Americans try to speak another language. But so if you ask questions or if you laugh like you just did, you will get chocolates.
Are you in the picture?
Pardon me?
Are you in the picture?
Oh, there, yeah. Yeah, for those in the back, it says MMO 1908. No, I was not a founding member. I was not here at the beginning. But these gentlemen were, and the Milwaukee Mandolin Orchestra is the longest continuously operating plectrum orchestra in the world. Now that's a lot of adjectives, but it's pretty cool. So we are the oldest. I'm also, for the last 6 years, I've been a board member of the Classical Mandolin Society of America, CMSA. And CMSA is very much like Superweek. We have, it's not funny. No chocolate for you. No, that's not true. You get chocolate. We have annual conventions where about 150 to 180 people get together for workshops, for hanging out at the bar, for celebrating, and then we play together at the end. So we kind of did that last night. Not all 180 of us, but quite a few of us were playing together last night. So we have virtual conventions now because, obviously, of COVID. So what the heck is a classical mandolinist? A classical mandolinist is somebody who plays mandolin, obviously, right, and plays classical music on it. Well, duh. All right. So that means they're playing Bach, right? Well, no, Bach didn't write for the mandolin. Or they're playing Vivaldi. He wrote a couple pieces for mandolin. They're playing Mozart. We saw Mozart earlier with Vienna. So Mozart was not worried about GDPR and GA, nor was he worried about writing for the mandolin, except for a tiny little bit in Don Giovanni. Beethoven, one piece for piano and mandolin. Brahms, not a chance. So what the heck do classical mandolinists play? Well, what we do, is we adopt. We adapt and adopt stuff from other traditions, including, for example, my friend Evan Marshall, who plays something that it seemed like it was going to become the theme song for Superweek. So let's listen to 25 seconds of the Superweek theme song on mandolin. Let's see if this works. How do I get this screen over there? Hold on. How do I get this screen?
You can exit to the presentation.
Okay. Oh, this is not as smooth as I thought it would be. And now I can do it, maybe? No? Ah, that's what I have to do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. See, that's why you rehearse beforehand. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's try that again. Man, this is hard. All right, so we're out of time now, but come on. All right, so yeah, rock on, right? Now, isn't that cool for mandolin? Yeah. I'm taking credit as if I had anything to do with that, which I didn't. But, all right, so now to get this back.
And that's all the time we had.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we've gone past that part, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we adapt. What does that remind me of? I was going to say classical mandolinists remind me of magpies because they're supposed to steal shiny things that they're attracted to, right? But I understand that that's actually a myth. So what the metaphor I came up with is actually closer to home. This is actually my backyard, and what you can't see here is a bird feeder. I have a crap load of bird feeders in my backyard, including here. And I really love the birds. I love feeding them. But anytime you have a bird feeder, you have, of course, squirrels. As a matter of fact, right back here, I don't know if you saw that, you have boy, this is really hard to control. You have a squirrel. But you have to admire squirrels because they are doing what the classical mandolinists are doing. They're going outside their tradition to get stuff from other people, to pull whatever they can, to steal from other people. And that, I mean, we as data analysts, we don't have a long tradition either. So what we can do is pull the shiny things, all that good food that other people have for them, and pull it into our own stuff. So be sure, as you do your data analyst work, to look outside of what you do, to look at like what Kamal was talking about with PPC and stuff like that. How can that apply to your role as a data analyst? Just look a little bit broader than yourself, than the specific little box that you're in. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So, be the squirrel. Now, if this isn't Twitter worthy, I don't know what is, but I can guarantee the things I'll be telling you will become better than be the squirrel. But that's where we're starting. Next thing is, let's talk about the tools. And actually, this is another video. I'm not going to go through that, but this is my teacher, Sebastian de Grieber, who is in the Netherlands, a great mandolinist. And his instrument is very different than the instrument that Evan Marshall was just playing. As a matter of fact, mandolinists, classical classical mandolinists, I think, are the only classical family I know of where the instruments vary so widely. If you look at a violin, they look pretty similar, right? I mean, to a luthier, to somebody who really plays, they can tell the few little differences apart. But to the outsider, they look the same. The bow that they use looks the same. A classical guitar looks very similar. They all look the same. Most people would never confuse a classical guitar with this fiber carbon guitar. The classical guitar has a distinct look. Not so the mandolin. With the mandolin, it almost doesn't matter what the instrument looks like. Let's look at some examples. So here's kind of the classic mandolin. A bowl back, so-called because the back looks at, man, this is hard to control. The bowl looks like a back. As a matter of fact, the back is a bowl. But you'll notice a couple things. One is they often have a fair amount of decoration on them, which is unusual in other instruments too. You often won't see that in a classical instrument. And here's a blow-up of that. Here's the American version of the mandolin. That's what this is. That's the one that I brought to Switzerland. Looks very much like this. This is a 1923 Lloyd Lord Gibson. This is a 1926 Gibson as well. So looks very different than the bowl back, but you still do play classical mandolin music on it. Pretty interesting, huh? Okay, pretty interesting, huh? Yes. All right. Who said that first? I think, Jeff, you said it first. Woo! All right, cool.
Can I just say,
yes?
this is actually an acoustic guitar,
That is an acoustic guitar.
not a classical one.
No, that's what I said. No one would confuse that for a classical guitar.
We'll show that later at the bar.
Oh, okay, all right, sounds good. Are you going to start arguing with me, Robert? You already threatened my life and that I'm here, but at any rate. So the other thing that's and then because my wife is from Brazil, I have to show a bandolim, which is the Brazilian version of the mandolin. And you can play this also. So you see three very different looking instruments, all of which can play classical mandolin music, which we steal from other sources. All right. How do you get the sound out of there? You use a pick, or a plectra, as it's called. This is the one that I typically use, a small little thing. But there's a whole variety of picks. I mean, hundreds of picks, including these things called Roman plectrum, which are what my teacher uses, as opposed to the one that Evan uses, which looks like this, kind of, but in size is like 1/10 the size of the plectra. So the instruments can be different, the strings can be different, the way you get the sound out of the instrument can be different, but it's still all people playing classical music on a mandolin. And again, very unusual in the classical world. What impact does that have for us? Tools are dumb. So Matt said this on Monday, and Matt complained about the photo that was shown, so I found a better photo of him. Exactly. So tools are dumb. What that means is that it almost doesn't matter what you're using to get that classical mandolin sound. Just like with data analysts, I would say it doesn't matter as much whether you're using GA3, GA4, and don't kill me for that, Adobe Analytics, Amplitude, or whatever. The skill is in how you implement that, the data you collect, how you interpret it. So I would say don't be hung up on the tool. Know that there's lots of different ways to get there. And I will say, having done a couple of large GA4 implementations now, I'm not a fan of the UI. I'm not here to defend GA4, but I love the data model. When you do like a GA3 to GA4 side by side when you're setting up a new website, oh man, the data model in GA4 is so much better. So that's a good tool, I think. All right. Next, the dullest pencil. The dullest pencil. When you first get a piece of music, when you're joining the orchestra and you get a piece of music, it looks something like this. And you've got some I'm not even going to try to use that. You have some indications of what the composer is trying to get you to do. At the top, it says MF, mezzo forte, start fairly strong, okay? Which is a setting that Yehoshua has never encountered. He always starts at F, which you can see there, and you can see those arrows going up saying, all right, start medium strong, and then go loud, go for it. So he always starts over there or on an even louder thing. But you have some indications in the music of what the composer wants you to do, right? Now, when you work with a conductor and you start reading through this music, you get a lot more stuff that gets added to it to add nuance, to add interpretation to the music. Now, this is taken from my iPad. That's where I store my music. So this really crappy handwriting is me writing on this kind of shaky, music stand with the pencil. But I understand that I'm going to lighten up on 2. There's going to be a rallentando. It's going to slow down here. So everything that the conductor is trying to get out of us gets written down here. And if 2 weeks later we pull this piece out again and play it, and people haven't written this stuff down, we remember like 25% of it, which pisses our conductor off so much. So he says, and I move this up. Oh, and this is the absolute best. The eyeglasses. Hey, dude, look up now. Look at the conductor. Make sure you're watching because he or she wants you to do something. I love the eyeglasses. That's where you really have to pay attention. Okay, and see how I moved it up for you all in the back? Isn't that great? So the dullest pencil, our conductor says, is better than the sharpest mind. 2 weeks from now, you won't remember that we were going to, do a sforzando here or whatever, or do some dynamics. But if you write it down, you will. So what does that have to do with data analysts? Let's go into GTM. So here's a recently published GTM container from one of our clients. And he published it, and there's no description. A small thing. But damn, I hate that. So this is my typical type thing. On every version of a GTM container, I write down what I'm doing, what's different about that version of the container. Why did I publish this container? And it may, I'm even trying to be funny. I can't actually get to the QA environment, so I'm not sure this works, but okay, who laughed? You laughed. All right.
Saying like no one is listening.
Okay, sounds good. So another example, at the container, it's kind of hard to read, but at the variable level, or the trigger or the tag, it's not. And so here's an example. Again, moved it up. So why is this variable here? It's based on one of Simo's blogs on how to strip out PII. In that blog, there was a very spirited debate from Brian Clifton on, hey, here's some other things we could do. Brian wrote a subsequent blog with some JavaScript that David Vallejo, he's not here, that David Vallejo contributed, and that's where this variable came from. So if you ever have any questions, if somebody coming down into this variable 6 months from now or a year from now, and they want to know what does this variable do and where did it come from, it's listed in here. One of my clients, when I took over their GTM container, the note was, Larry saw this in a blog. And I'm thinking, who's Larry and what blog? So it's like, you have to be specific. You have to have more information to have in the notes. So I know you're thinking, this is child play. This is so stupid. This is so basic. And this is my granddaughter, by the way. But it's not. It's not. I know Roberto and Matteo talked about the importance of documentation. I know Ilya talked about documentation in his talk. And the really interesting thing is that when Neil talked, and I thought this was really great, at the end of Neil's presentation, he had, I think it was 10 things, right? 10 things that you should do to communicate. And one of them was send out your report not on Monday at 10 a.m. when nobody reads it, but right before the person needs it. So almost a just-in-time reporting. And there's nothing more just-in-time then this. If I'm trying to troubleshoot something, this is the documentation I need. I may have great documentation in GitHub, I may have it in other places, but put it here too. It's a tiny thing. 3 minutes here will save you 3 hours, 3 months down the line when you're trying to figure out what the heck happened here. All right, so there's my granddaughter again, and there's Neil. I would rather see a picture of my granddaughter. Sorry, Neil, but whatever, yeah. So the second key point, be the dull pencil. See, isn't the advice getting better? That's better than being the squirrel, right? Be the dull pencil. Oh, nobody thinks so? Okay, well, no chocolate for you.
Is there a sequence there? Like mandolin, scroll, pencil?
Oh, yes, there is, Julian. Of course there is. All right. Practice. Practice, practice, practice. Quick poll. Who goes with A? All right, Jeff, thank you. Only one person goes with A. Who goes with B? Really? All right. That's not what I was expecting, but okay, good, good. That sounds good.
Outside of this specific.
All of the above. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, all of the above. That's a trick question. Okay, so the practice room. If you've ever seen music majors, this is where they spend most of their time, in a practice room. Now, practice is interesting because practice is where musicians work, right? They're not going into an office. If they're a full-time musician or something, the practice is really their work. Sure, they play concerts and stuff like that, but that's not their work. I mean, yeah, it is kind of. But the real work is in the practice room, right? And that practice room is devoid of things that are going to distract you. In the practice room, when you're practicing your instrument, you have to pay attention. You have to listen. As one of my mandolin teachers said, Fred, use your ears. Does it sound good? Are you producing a good sound? Use your ears. Pay attention. Don't do scales in front of the TV. Pay attention to what you're playing. Be focused. Listen. Quick confessions. I am data-driven. I go by gut. I am data-driven, except I'm when I really don't want to be. And the reason I say this is because that type of practice that the musicians are doing is not what the typical data analyst is doing. They have Slack notifications up. They've got their Outlook notifications up. They've got Twitter up. I mean, I do that too. But if you are in the middle of a problem and you respond to a Slack notification, you've lost like 5 minutes. And there's data behind that. Those interruptions, you may think, oh, I can multitask, I'm great, I'm a millennial, and like that guy talking about mandolins. No, everybody loses ground when they get interrupted like that. So, and they will all say, yeah, I'm data-driven, but I don't want to turn off Slack. Do it. Turn it off, pay attention to the work that you're doing for an hour or two. You can go to the emails later, you can respond to Slack later or whatever. If I'm at work and I Slack somebody and they respond instantly, and they always do that, it's like, I don't like that. That's not good. So what I would say is use your practice to focus on what you're working on. But of course, musicians play too, right? Yeah, that's the fun. That's part of the fun of being a musician. So. That's interesting. All right, here's where the play comes from. I was wondering where this was going. So I've taken a number of courses over the years, like all of you, of course. And I owe a lot of what I know to Mr. Jeff Sauer in the back. And so I'm going to talk about 2 ways that I learn, one which you don't have to do, the second I would highly recommend. So here, I took his GA course several years ago, and what I do is I go through the video, I listen to it, I write in my own words what the lesson was about. And so you can see, you can't see in the back, but this one, 55 pages, 15,000 words from Jeff's course, okay? Same thing with when I learned GTM from Julian Johanneman, that was 51 pages, 8,000 words. Julius's intermediate one is 38 pages, 5,300 words. Simo's advanced GTM course at CXL, where Yehoshua was one of the students too, 32 pages, very dense, 6,200 words. And his most recent, I've switched from Word to Google Docs. So his most recent server-side GTM, 110 pages, almost 14,000 words. So that's one of the ways I learn, is by trying to take what I watched and write it down in my own words to incorporate it. But that's not as good, or that's not as important as the playing that I do. So like with Simo recently, for example, I'm going through that. He's doing some stuff, then I go try it. I don't learn by just watching the video. I learn by playing with the stuff we're talking about. And I remember one of the videos, one of the lessons he did, I thought, so I got about 5 minutes into it, and it's like, oh, I know what he's going to do. I'm just going to go do it and see what happens. So I went and I did it. It worked and everything. Then I said, oh, I'm going back to Simo's video. And he did it a different way. It's like, oh, isn't that interesting? As with most things in GTM, there's more than one way to do it. There's a Fred way, the bad way, and there's a Simo way. But so I think playing with the stuff you're learning is what makes it real. It's what makes it stick. I think doing the notes, for me, that helps. That's kind of the documentation I do. But it's really the playing. And with Jeff's course, I think that each lesson was 20 minutes. I would allocate an hour, 20 minutes for the video, 40 minutes to go into the different GA accounts I had access to, play with them, experiment with the stuff he talked about. So I think we can take that same play attitude that a mandolinist does and apply it here too, to our learning, which is kind of different because this is our practice versus, but at any rate, I think it's a good thing to learn. Problem solving. I may not do this one, but all right, let's talk. We've seen this already, La Flor de Mexico. Here's La Flor de Milwaukee with my dog down at the bottom. So one of the things that any piece of music is going to have is some tricky pieces, is some tricky sections. And to learn how to solve that can be really interesting, I think. So I'm not sure I'm really going to do this, because I'm more terrified about playing by myself in front than speaking. But let's take a look at how we would do this. So there's yeah, that sounded pretty terrible. See, that's why you have to practice. So the tricky part, and I really do get nervous playing an instrument in front of people. I'm always used to playing with people, never solo. I'm never a solo person. But anyway, so the tricky portion is that. So break down the tricky sections to just the portion that is giving you the most problem, and then expand on that. All right, so that's kind of interesting. Then add the whole thing, which we've already done, so I'm not going to do that. The really interesting thing is then take that whole thing and go backwards. So instead of see, I can't even do it. There, kind of. But if you break it, yeah. Who clapped first here? That was, yeah, that's what I thought. All right. Thank you. All right, so if you do that, if you know it forward and backwards, you know it forward and backwards, which means you know it, right? So when you come to this piece, when you're playing it, this section that's tricky, you can play it. And as a matter of fact, the way I used to practice, and you rarely practice a whole piece. You practice the difficult parts, and then sometimes you practice the whole piece, but you practice the difficult parts. So I would have them highlighted, kind of the way this is here. And ultimately, when it came to concerts, I'd begin to freak out because I'd see that highlight coming up, and it's like, oh, here comes trouble. So I stopped highlighting in the music. But so what do we as analysts do? I was talking to Ahmad when he hears from somebody that 5 minutes? Okay. All right, I'm going to break it down, extend it. There we go. Thank you, sir. And my clicker, oh, right there it is. Okay, the next thing is listen. This should work fine. Here's the people at the CMSA convention. So as I said, about 150, 180 people. We all get together in a great big orchestra, and we play a concert at the end, which is a lot of fun. The mandolin orchestra is like a regular orchestra in that it has mandolin ones instead of violin ones. It has mandolin twos instead of violin twos. It has mandolas instead of violas. It has mandocellos instead of cellos. And it has bass, sometimes mando bass, and in this case, guitar. So this whole group of people right here in front is the M2s, the mandolin twos. That's the group that I'm a part of. And M2s, like data analysts, like to stick together. The most popular place in the M2 section is right here, right in the middle of the M2, because you are surrounded by people playing the exact same music that you're playing. The sweet spot, the best spot in the orchestra, is right here, right in the center where I'm sitting. And I don't have to compete for that spot, because no one wants that spot. But right here, I'm listening to the M1s, the mandolin ones. I'm listening to the mandolas behind me. I have the bass behind me. I have the guitars right over here. The only thing I don't have right behind me are the mandocellos. This is the magic of the orchestra. You hear how your part fits with everybody else. You hear how your lines integrate with other lines. Over here, you don't hear that. All you hear is people playing the same thing. So, we've talked about moving beyond our role as data analysts into the business role and trying to understand the business and trying to provide value to the business. If you think of that center spot in that orchestra, that's what you should be doing. You should be playing in those central spots where you're working with other people, and maybe you can find out more about the business, but you can also look at let's say you had a business leader who is actually interested in analytics for some reason, which is very rare. So let's say they go to Forbes, a reputable business magazine, and Google Analytics, you're doing it wrong. 3 quick tips. All right, so it tells you 3 massive ways to do things correctly. Google Analytics can be your best friend. Are you actually getting the best results from Google? Oh my God, I'm going to get a great tip here. First, monitor your bounce rate like a hawk. Are you freaking kidding me? This is what the business leaders are reading? Monitor it like a hawk? Man, no, you need to get up to the business group and tell them this is what's important, and you can only do that if you understand what the business is all about and where your value comes in. Do not trust them to read crap like this and understand analytics. You have to go out and play in the middle. And here's Astrid mentioned there's four different groups at our company that all come together to talk about the customer journey. And Tim Wilson, this is on purpose. There is no you here. We're missing you. But at any rate, that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that get in other groups, get outside your group, get outside of that group of M2s, and expand your horizons. All right. So and here's an example of a guy in SEO who talks about it too, kind of. So live in the interface. Live where all those things connect, where all those things come together. That's way more fun than living just in the data analyst group. I've talked about a couple of my passions, GA and GTM, mandolins. I'll leave you with my last two, my dog and my granddaughter. And I'm Fred Pike, and I'm here for questions. And, if anybody wants a CD of the Milwaukee Mandolin Orchestra, these are available as well. And there's a few more Chocolates do Brasil.
Congratulations, that was fascinating. As a part of a family that's really into music, I can really see how you're getting off. That's awesome. Let's see, not you, Robert. Any non-musicians have questions for Fred? I promise we'll get to you.
Hi, Fred. Thank you for the great presentation and a piece of mandolin as well that you played. Just one question. So you also mentioned Be the Dull Pencil, where you describe to put the description in the GTM workspace while you publish it. Can you please go back to that slide, because I was not able to relate. How do you relate that with the mandolin thing?
So this is, you have to not be the dull pencil, or you have to use the dull pencil on music. Actually, it's back here. So that was you're wondering how they tied in. Wow, that's back quite a bit, isn't it?
Putting it backwards.
That's true. That's true. All right, this one. Yeah. Okay. So how does this relate to music?
Exactly. To mandolin thing, the entire thing. Yeah.
Okay, so this is here you're being the dull pencil as opposed to the sharpest mind, because you're documenting what you did. So that's what the purpose is. Yeah, highlighting the stuff and everything. Was that your question?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Thank
Good.
you.
Sure.
Do you use Google Sheet, Google Documents for the documentation? Because I never use Note inside, but just in the describe of the publishing of the GTM. Of course, I write a little piece of description, but I link the Google Docs or Google Sheet with all
sure.
history of because is more valuable and you can filter it. And so, did you?
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. So I think the important thing is if you have a way to quickly get at the documentation source when you need it. Yeah, so if you have a link to the Google Doc, that's a great idea. Yep, that's why you're so much more brilliant. That's why you won and I didn't. I didn't even compete.
It's Google Sheet music.
Yeah, there you go. Google Sheet music. Oh, man. All right.
Thanks, Julian. I promise this is the last question before my presentation. It's okay. You use Google Sheets for at least the list of songs we will play.
We did, yes. So I have used Google Sheets in the past, yes.
Yeah. Thanks for the great presentation. I told you we should do one together. Okay. A bit of maybe of a personal question. You said that part of the sweet spot in the orchestra is amazing. I'm going to use it in my other presentations. With your permission, definitely.
Absolutely.
But
Yep.
that's it. That's when we need to stand out of the comfort zone and listen to others. That's perfect. But you said you hate, you don't feel comfortable playing solos.
Correct.
I will ask why is that. But first, I will ask you, how do you feel then, as a consultant, being solo in front of the client or a bunch of clients presenting what you are talking about?
Oh, that's a great question. No, that I don't mind at all. I will
Because
speak
this is emotional, this is rational, or?
You know, so I started as a guitarist, basically, and most solo guitarists sing. You know, that's what they do. Like Tim Wilson's got a nice voice and sings and stuff. I don't have a nice voice. So that whole portion of my life just kind of fell apart. You know, I'm kind of true confessions here, but no. So I never did solo music stuff much. I've always been in bands of some sort, and it just feels way more comfortable. But talking to a bunch of people in front of a group, I'm fine with that.
So I do have a question.
Okay.
Let's. Can you get us back to that picture of you in the middle of the orchestra, please?
Sure. Yeah.
Just picking your work. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I have a strong thumb.
Click, damn it.
Oh, there we go.
Right.
Oops, too far.
Now, if you can see Fred there, he can decide to to stop playing, and no one will notice.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Yeah, which a lot of the M2s do. You can hide here.
It's so lazy.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend. It's been enlightening.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Anyone else that I forgot? I totally forgot you. I'm sorry.
Oh, one of my
Yeah,
fellow,
thanks a lot.
fellow
Thanks a lot.
musicians.
So yeah, this really hits home for me, and maybe first of like a tip maybe to Matteo as well. The notes field in Google Tag Manager is actually available in the API, so you can connect everything together. Yeah. But my question is actually about the playing things backwards, because that was eye-opening for me. I spent a lot of hours in my life practicing, like you mentioned, you play the small part a lot of times, and you play it in context. And I was thinking, but I never really played it backwards. But I was really like, okay, this is a really good idea to really understand what's going on. And I was wondering if you can sort of maybe expand on the analogy to the data analyst. Like, what is the stuff that you need to do sort of backwards in a way that you need to know forwards and backwards as an analyst?
Yeah, so I did mention that Ahmad, I ran this past Ahmad, and he said, oh, that's exactly what I do when a client calls and says my Google Data Studio report is not running. I start at the Data Studio, I look at the connections, I work my way backwards down to see, are the events firing originally, and so he's starting at the end and working back to see what happens. It's not a super close correlation to data analysts, but the whole thing about breaking it down to small and knowing it really well. And you can know things backwards and forwards without actually, tracking it backwards. So I think it's still a valid one.
If I may contribute on this one, I think a lot of what we do is scripted, sequential, and requires a lot of trial and error, and of course, being able to understand how the sequence works means you've also played and failed. Doing things, in a very specific order, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. A great Super Week. Round of applause for Fred.
Thank you.
And with that, we break for coffee and munchies and, sweet stuff.